The biggest energy waste in a factory is often not an inefficient machine. It is two systems doing opposite things at the same time. The chiller plant rejects heat while the boiler burns fuel to produce heat. Air compressors discharge high-temperature heat while a cleaning line still uses steam. Solar power is abundant at noon, while chillers and heat pumps run during the evening peak. Those are the problems industrial energy integration is meant to solve. In one sentence, industrial energy integration means matching the electricity, heat, cooling, steam, pressure, recovered energy, and operating flexibility available from one system to the real demand of another. It is not simply a collection of solar panels, batteries, heat pumps, and a control platform. 4 questions must be answered. Can the energy be converted? Does its grade match the demand? Do supply and demand occur at the same time? And has any benefit been counted twice? Most practical industrial energy integration projects fall into 6 types. The first type connects electricity with heat, cooling, and steam. Heat pump converts electricity into hot water or low-temperature process heat. An electric chiller converts electricity into cooling. Electric and electrode boilers can produce hot water or steam. Solar and wind generation can also be directed first to flexible loads such as heat pumps, chillers, air compressors, and nitrogen generators. But electrification is not automatically energy efficient. Equipment efficiency, time of use tariffs, maximum demand, grid capacity, and the actual carbon factor must all be impaired. Otherwise, final energy use may fall while the electricity bill and the facility peak both rise. The second type connects natural gas or other fuels with electricity, heat, and cooling. Gas turbines, reciprocating engines, or fuel cells can generate electricity. Their high-temperature exhaust heat can then produce steam, hot water, or process heat. If that heat also drives an absorption chiller, the result is combined cooling, heat, and power. This works best where electrical, heating, and cooling loads are stable and annual utilization is high. Biomass, biogas, and selected hydrogen pathways can also enter this system. But fuel availability, continuity, cost, safety, and technology maturity must be verified separately. A concept diagram is not enough. The third type is two-way integration between cooling and heating. A refrigeration system does not only produce cooling, it rejects heat at the same time. Cold stores, dairy plants, beverage and brewery operations, food processors, and pharmaceutical factories may use condenser heat for domestic hot water, cleaning water, CIP preheating, feed preheating, or low-temperature process heat. Where cooling and heating are required simultaneously, a heat recovery chiller can supply cooling on one side and useful heat on the other. In the reverse direction, high-temperature steam, flue gas, or process waste heat can drive absorption cooling. The most common mistake is double counting the value of condenser heat recovery and a heat recovery chiller. They may use the same heat source. Only one constrained, technically feasible configuration can remain in the final business case. The fourth type is the cascaded use of steam, hot water, and process waste heat. High-temperature heat should serve high-temperature processes first. Condensate, flash steam, low-temperature flue gas, and exhaust air heat can then be matched in sequence to preheating, cleaning, space heating, ventilation air, and domestic hot water. In boiler houses, kilns, dryers, paper mills, textile plants, chemical sites, and food factories, this system-level approach often creates more value than replacing one machine with a more efficient model. If the waste heat temperature is too low, a heat pump can raise its grade. If both temperature and scale are high enough, waste heat power generation may be evaluated, but it is not suitable for every factory. Temperature, flow, stability, and annual operating hours are all essential. The fifth type connects compressed air and pressure energy with other systems. Most of the electricity entering an air compressor ultimately becomes heat. A stable compressor station can recover that heat for hot water, cleaning, drying, or process preheating. Air receivers, network pressure, and standby compressors also provide a degree of load flexibility. Compressors can avoid high price periods or participate in demand response. Where a large and continuous pressure drop exists, pressure energy recovery may also be assessed. But compressed air is an expensive secondary energy carrier. Never manufacture extra compressed air simply to claim storage value. Leakage, artificial demand, and excessive pressure must be corrected first. The sixth type connects renewables and storage with flexible loads. Solar and wind power can supply production directly, charge batteries, or be converted into cooling, heat, or compressed air and stored in chilled water tanks, hot water tanks, or existing air receivers. Cooling, heating, and charging can be advanced into low-price or renewable surplus periods, reducing grid demand during the evening peak. Add production scheduling, interruptible loads, and demand response, and the result becomes coordinated dispatch across an industrial park. It may then connect to a virtual power plant. The same anti-double counting rule applies. 1 kilowatt-hour of solar generation can only be allocated once. The same peak reduction cannot be claimed in full by the battery, thermal storage, compressed air storage, and production shifting at the same time. The dominant integration path changes by industry. Food and dairy plants connect refrigeration, condenser heat, steam, CIP hot water, and sometimes biogas. Textile and paper mills connect steam, condensate, wastewater heat, drying, and ventilation air. Steel, ceramics, cement, and kiln operations connect high-temperature flue gas with steam, power generation, and cascaded heat use. Data centers and electronics plants connect cooling, electricity, storage, and low-grade waste heat. Chemical and pharmaceutical sites commonly coordinate steam, thermal oil, chilled water, pressure energy, process waste heat, and industrial gases. At industrial park scale, companies may exchange steam, hot water, cooling, waste heat, and byproduct gases. Wastewater, river water, mine water, and data center heat can also serve as heat pump sources. Electrolytic hydrogen may connect surplus renewable electricity with industrial hydrogen demand, oxygen byproducts, and waste heat use. But this is a conditional pathway. It must be judged against real offtake, infrastructure constraints, safety, and full life cycle cost. There are many possible scenarios, but a project only needs 6 boundary checks. First, is the quantity sufficient? Second, do temperature, pressure, and medium quality match? Third, do supply and demand overlap in time? Fourth, are distance and distribution losses acceptable? Fifth, do control safety and production constraints permit the change? Sixth, have capital cost, operating cost, carbon value, and risk been calculated separately with no double counting? The correct sequence never starts with buying equipment. First, remove unreasonable demand within each system. Then inventory the waste heat, waste cooling, pressure energy, renewable power, and operating flexibility that can be exported. Match quantity, grade, time, and location. Add storage only where a genuine timing mismatch remains. Unified control and an energy and carbon platform come last to coordinate dispatch. The core value of industrial energy integration is not a more complicated system. It is making energy that was rejected, missed, or purchased twice create value somewhere else. That is the system optimization an integrated energy project should deliver.